The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. Welcome to ADjunct, where we interview the top advertising lecturers and professors across the country to lend some knowledge to your ear, without spending thousands of dollars on a university credit. This week, we learn from Marshall Goldman. Marshall is a professional lecturer at Depaul University in Chicago, where he focuses on writing and advertising. He has such a way with words and storytelling this episode. I cannot wait for you to hear and learn from him. But Marshall is an international executive creative director and eminent copywriter who worked at Leo Burnett in the US and throughout Europe, Africa, and the Middle East for over 20 years. In all his client and educational work, Goldman stresses the importance of what he calls brand patriotism. It's a position he defines as an unflagging belief in and defense of the value, power, and meaning of a brand. We uncover it all in this episode. We speak about how aspiring advertisers should become brand patriots and how to do it in a way that lands you in your dream agency. Learning and connecting with Marshall is an excellent step to breaking into advertising. And I have another great step too to help you out. I have spoken to hundreds of professionals, and the consensus is that you need a few fantastic campaigns that stick out to break into advertising. So if you want to break into this business as an art director, copywriter, strategist, or even account sometimes, it is worth checking out Breaking and Entering's brand new Crowbar Awards. We are releasing a new creative brief every quarter for you to work on with a friend. Whether or not you enter is totally up to you, but we do have Greg Hahn judging this first show. Greg Hahn is co-founder of Mischief, one of the top ad agencies in the business right now. So it's an award and a tool. The best campaign will earn an actual blue crowbar, but we do not advise you to break into an advertising agency with it. But if you do, take some pictures because that's pretty funny. Recruiters and professionals will be watching the winners, so it can really help. See this podcast description for more details on how to enter or reach out to me directly. Happy to help. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast Adjunct edition. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Marshall Goldman, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. This is the Adjunct edition. How are you doing today? And thanks for coming on.
I'm fine, Gino. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
We're not too far from each other right now. We learned you're in Chicago, Lincoln Park. So am I.
I am, and you're in Lincoln Park as well, which is another part of it. Do you go into the office?
I go 100% of the time.
Cool. Me too, as much as I can.
What's that?
I go as often as I can. For me, that's where I work. I don't work in my office, like my home office here. That's what it means to be there. It makes a difference for me.
I love going in. I'm off right now. That's why I'm not there. And why I have a studio there too. So I can use the podcast. They let me podcast there in that studio. It's super, super nice.
That's cool.
So, and also maybe a little bit of job insecurity. I think showing up just makes me feel better. Yeah, and the balance too of separating home and work is a mental health thing for me.
Right.
And also people did it for a long time before the pandemic. I don't know. Let's bring it back.
I agree. Sorry to digress, but
no, that's a good point. So we're here to talk about you, and we're here to talk about your experience in Chicago advertising and working at Depaul, because today you are currently a professional lecturer in writing and advertising at Depaul University. Is that correct?
It is.
Great.
That's the title they use.
What was that?
That's the title they use. I'm not really a professor, although I get called professor, but officially I'm not. Officially, I'm a professional lecturer.
Okay. Yeah. What's the difference between a professional lecturer and a professor then?
Probably the PhD.
And you don't have a PhD.
I don't, which is why I can't become a professor there and earn tenure, which I think, is again, one of these things that's just been part of university histories for, centuries, but the way in which schools are going, and the desire to bring in people. I mean, just the very fact that they have people like myself or adjuncts who are professional industry people, not academic. To me, you have to rethink the whole PhD. Like, I would think, someone with 24 years experience at an agency,
a PhD.
Globally, that's a PhD.
Absolutely.
But it still doesn't work that way yet. So,
they have.
We can't get tenure,
right? And you don't care. That's not what it's about. But
no, but it is a job security for. I mean,
oh yeah,
like that is one of the key things, is that it's, among other things, among its recognition and all the other, tenure is job security up to far stronger than my annual renewal.
Of course,
like an insurance policy.
Advertising, especially, they have professors of practice. And I've noticed I have interviewed people that have gotten tenure track because of like their extracurriculars that they manage, and they kind of like, they get around the system. They work the system a little bit, but learning about the tenure track process seems miserable. I don't know if I would ever want to go PhD tenure track. And then somebody said it was the most grueling experience of their life, which is interesting. So,
yeah, it's stressful. I mean, that's how I started, actually. In college, I wanted to be a university professor. Like that was what I wanted to. My background is English, comparative literature, and creative writing. So I wanted to teach literature and creative writing, predominantly poetry. And so I got the master's degree. I went to the University of Washington in Seattle.
Beautiful school.
Beautiful place in the world.
Yeah. Seen pictures I've ever been.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I got my master's, and I was sort of like, I got accepted into the PhD program, but I guess I just was a little bit, I don't want to say burned out, but I just wanted a little break from school. And I just figured that they accepted me. I can always come back in a year or two. Nothing's going to really change, but I would take a little break.
But you changed.
I did, but it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, is because I never thought about going into advertising. And when I went to school, they didn't have programs like Pratt. So most of the people who went into advertising on the copy side were like English majors. Maybe philosophy, or they became the strategists.
Sure.
And, art students became the art directors.
Yep.
There was no school and program like Pratt, for example, where if that's what I want to do, this is almost like, going to med school.
Right.
When you get out, you have a job. When I left school, I didn't know what to do. I literally, it was like, I had no idea how to apply what I was good at and my skills in the world in Chicago. And then one day somebody said to me, "Hey, why don't you freelance?" And I looked at them and I said, "What does freelance mean?" I swear to God, I didn't even know what the word was.
Sure.
And so, well, you kind of like, just like, you're a consultant and they pay you by the project. It's like, oh, okay. So that sort of kicked it off. And when I finally, to make a long story short, I ended up at Leo Burnett and working on Marlboro 98% of the time I was at Burnett for all those years. Truly, because of the way the brand worked, satisfied my creative need.
Gotcha.
I mean, we didn't rewrite "Come to Marlboro Country, come to where the flavor is." I mean, that was done. That was great. But how do you write ideas that build this brand over decades? Right. This was all about coming up with creative ideas and writing them, like your presentation boards, and I was hired particularly at the time to do one-to-one, what they called direct mail back then. But it was one-to-one. And so you had the time to write and romance the brand to the people who were going to read it.
Sure.
And as I say, creatively, it was extraordinarily satisfying.
I want to back it up, though, because I am curious. So you, just to recap, you initially wanted to become a university professor. You thought about PhD. You went and freelanced instead. and then you ended up at Burnett. Are those the key points? You never thought about going back to your PhD? How did you get into Burnett? I mean, go freelancing to Burnett.
There were like lots of like jigs and jags. So I freelanced. My best friend in high school was also sort of a mirror image of me, a little bit like Ken. We both, went to university. We were English majors. So what are we going to do? My friend went to Oregon. We came back. We started a little kind of freelance business here in Chicago called Idiom a long time ago. Cool. And we got some clients. I was like, I kind of like advertising. This is kind of fun. And he got married and said, I need a full-time job. I'm going to go to work for a bank, which was one of our clients. We were doing like training videos. So it's like, okay, that's cool. I had a girlfriend who lived in Rochester, New York. And this was in the 80s when I always sort of referred to them as sort of like the big, small cities, like Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Rochester, Austin, Raleigh. Mm-hmm. In the 80s, these were the cities that were the hothouses of advertising.
Really?
Fallon McElligott, Minneapolis. It wasn't LA, it wasn't Chicago, it wasn't New York. It was Minneapolis.
Richmond.
Right, Richmond, Milwaukee, Austin, Rochester. They had the little Rochester had 17 little boutique agencies.
Interesting.
So I went to work in Rochester. Everybody worked on Kodak, among other clients, right? I met my partner, my art director, his name was John Kuchera. He was much older than me. The most brilliant man I ever met. I mean, taught me literally everything about the business. He was like, if I could have picked a better partner, there's no way it would have happened.
Amazing.
He just was the warmest, kindest, most generous human and teacher. And then, one thing led to another. I was a copywriter at the agency. The creative director, his last name was Meharry. The associate creative director, her last name was Meharry. The senior copywriter, his last name was
Meharry.
And then there was Marshall. My last name is Goldman, not Meharry. So I wasn't really, going to go anywhere at that place.
Yeah.
And somehow, I don't know, I said, I met some people. They said, come back to Chicago. I came back. I hooked up with a woman named Dale Fells. You probably don't know her, maybe never even heard of her, but then, this was in the 90s, early 90s, she was basically a creative rep. You went to them and gave them your book and they reviewed it and they said, oh, okay. And they found you jobs at agencies.
Right.
It's not happening anymore. They were creative headhunters, if you will.
There's some out there. We've had, I know a couple. Sasha.
That whole thing has changed, right? Yep. Agencies don't want to pay, and everything is digitized. Yep. But there it was, the big portfolio, the big black case. Yep. She took it around a couple of places. They said, Leo Burnett's really interested. You want to talk with them? I was like, yeah, sure, I want to talk with them. They want you to work on Marlboro, and because of your background in Rochester, Marlboro was starting a one-to-one initiative. So they realized the limitation, particularly legally, of advertising, public advertising. They knew that was going to go away. This isn't like 89.
Smart.
So they wanted to see okay, how do we talk to one-to-one to our smokers, right? So
and what was the medium at that time?
It was.
What were you writing?
It was mail.
Mail.
I was writing letters,
mailers.
Brochures. We would mail boxes. Some of the stuff was amazing.
That sounds like a nice, for a writer, that's like the perfect gig. And that's what, David Ogilvy preached direct mail. You should definitely take a lot of time to in direct mail he wrote about. So as a writer, it sounds like a pretty good gig. It
was great. But I then got integrated into the Marlboro group, not the direct group, because Burnett formed a little group called the Director Group or whatever they called it, right?
Sure.
So I was hired into that. My client was Marlboro with Burnett. But
gotcha.
I remember going to a meeting after working on an assignment, and the creative director, his name was Ken Crome. He was there for decades, basically built the brand. And he, I presented my stuff to him, and he's from Oklahoma, and he kind of had an accent a little bit like that. And
that's what you want.
He said, Marshall, that seems like pretty good stuff. You seem to know what you're doing. But I can tell you, you don't know shit about Marlboro.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So, how can you write about the brand if you're not in the brand, right?
Start smoking.
I was in this like peripheral satellite.
So what'd you do?
So I
Start
just
smoking, hang out with cowboys?
well, I was already smoking. So they just moved me into the Marlboro group. I just became part of the Marlboro group, focused on direct and also promotions. I don't know if you probably don't remember, but you might have friends who are a little older. In 91, Marlboro ran a promotion called the Marlboro Adventure Team. It was the largest and most successful promotion in packaged goods history.
Okay.
It was a redemption. It was one of the first significant redemption programs. There was a little 5-mile symbol on the pack, and you saved these and redeemed them for very cool gear. I mean, gear made by like the people who, like Patagonia level gear. I mean, this is Marlboro. They didn't scrimp.
No.
And for probably the first 3 years, you could not find a pack of cigarettes that didn't have this torn off. We created a currency. As I said, it was the largest promotion in packaged goods history. Okay. Marlboro, this is a little numerical background. It's interesting. They predominantly measure themselves in what they call smoker share, right? So of all the people smoking, how many smoke Marlboro? And they were a 22 share. And they were afraid of Camel. And maybe you remember Joe Camel, this cartoon character. Yep. Well, they were kind of afraid of him because he was like
next competitor,
funny and hip and a cartoon, and Marlboro was a serious cowboy,
Yeah.
So we ran this promotion basically to just separate ourselves. I mean, they were only a 6 share, but Philip Morris was concerned. At the end of a year and a half of the Adventure Team, we went from a 22 share to a 34 share.
Huge increase. Wow.
So at the time. And the thing about promotions generally is that, you'll have this.
It'll die down, you're saying?
It never went down.
Good.
It
was effective. It plateaued.
Yeah. I mean, it changed the game in the United States for sure.
So what was this? It was a promotion strategy. What was it? You would collect
so the
packages or what?
The promotion itself was called the Adventure Team. So the top tier prize, if you will, was 10 people at the time. It was 10 guys went out to Marlboro country. There was this 500-mile trek through sort of the four corners: Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah. All right. By White River rafting, horseback, motorcycle, and four-wheel Jeeps for 10 days. 10 guys would go out there, and we were led through this Marlboro country experience. It was amazing. But it was only 10 people. So the biggest, most influential part of the program was, if you can't make the team, get the gear that the team carries. So everybody collected, everybody who wanted to apply, only 10 people were chosen.
Right.
But millions and millions of people saved coupons, not a coupon, cut this little 5-mile symbol out to quote 5 miles, track the team. So get the miles, get the gear. So you save these little mile things,
gotcha.
Get the gear. Gotcha. And that went on for quite a number of years. And as I said, it was the most successful and the largest, most successful promotion in packaged goods history. So I didn't invent it, but I led it. It was
nice.
I was responsible for
more than the McDonald's Scrabble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw there was like a documentary on that Scrabble, or some sort of Simon agency that was not doing things properly, or they had some conspiracy. Yeah. I don't know. We don't have to get into that.
Like, what's the online place where people sell stuff?
eBay.
Go to eBay, type in Marlboro Adventure Team.
Yeah.
And you'll see gear, T-shirts and hats.
How expensive they're going for now, you think?
Good stuff. Like, it's really good.
And that stuff just ages.
Sorry?
It ages so nicely, that retro aspect of it too. Like, it's just so collectibles now.
Great, and as the
Do you have anything?
No, I don't remember who made it, but it was a very high-end manufacturer.
Okay.
And Nancy Lund, who was the brand manager at the time at Marlboro, she said, "Remember, when you bring us ideas, we're not Marlboro County. We are Marlboro Country. Big ideas that would always be executed flawlessly. If they had, they had the money to do it. They wouldn't be frivolous. But if they saw an idea that was like what most people thought would be astronomically expensive, and they saw the value in it, they'd fund it.
And that's so nice.
Creative is like amazing.
That's what you want.
Right?
Yeah, they want big ideas and they're not afraid to spend money. They're pushing you. That sounds like the perfect creative client.
And nobody knew that. That was like the deep kept secret, is that everyone thought, you work on Marlboro, it's an art director thing. What's a writer going to do? Very few clients had the kind of money that they would spend for creative. And if you're a creative, you want to execute your stuff.
Yeah.
And they could, we did film. We did commercials. Yeah, they were shot by Tony Scott, Ridley Scott's brother.
Oh, really? Cool.
We didn't fuck around. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're good to swear. Yeah.
They got the best people possible to we got.
Well, they got one of the best agencies. They're picking the best of the best. Yeah.
Yeah. And they ran like for 5 minutes in like Cinnamon, Germany, and other places in the world when they was able to. In the States. So there were still places in the world where they ran them, and they were really short films.
Yeah.
It was amazing stuff. Very satisfying.
I love it. And it is, thank you for opening up about that and being candid. I know some people don't want to work on cigarettes or tobacco, and that's perfectly fine. You have a choice as a professional. You can say no. You might not get the job. You might not be able to work at an agency if that's the only opening, but that's okay. That's up to you. That's your own personal battle. Whatever you think you can do. I don't know what the economy is going to look like. I mean, me personally, I don't mind working on that type of stuff as well. If you could say no to the job because that's what you want, then feel free, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their own, whatever moral
lines.
line.
Yeah.
And I had no issue with it.
Yeah.
But I respected others who did. That's their feeling. Well, that's cool.
Absolutely. Cool. Let's talk about you right now though. So 21 years. How long were you? You were
23 years at Burnett.
Wow, that's a long time at one agency. Yeah,
that's another thing. Is that I remember
always Marlboro.
Yeah, I worked a little bit on McDonald's, but as I said, 98% of my time was on Marlboro. I'd get called in to work on, of course,
pitches and stuff. Yeah.
But I worked on Marlboro, and I didn't want it any other way. And for a while, I wanted to work on United Airlines because they did really cool stuff. But I really chose to stay on Marlboro. But what I was going to say was, I remember Leo Burnett used to have an annual Christmas party, and they would hold it at
the breakfast.
Yeah, the breakfast, and they'd hold it in the Chicago Theater. And so first you'd come to the office and you'd have some, a couple of Bloody Marys and meet with everybody in your group, then go over to the Chicago Theater, which is basically across the street from the Leo Burnett building.
Yeah.
And they would put on the show, and there would be speeches, and they'd show the reel of the year and highlights, and, the president, people would come up and talk and say this, talk about the year and what the plans for next year. And I remember the first time I went to this, it was, because I started in March of '89, so this was like December. Okay, so I was there 8 months or something, and I remember sitting there and going, "I could work here my whole career."
Yeah,
I can't ever see a reason for leaving. If I ever maybe didn't want to work on Marlboro, I'll just go down 2 floors and I can work on United. I mean, it was like Marshall Fields, right? You go from floor to floor, and there was, you don't want to work on men's clothes, go into housewares, right?
Yeah. I think everybody
such a profound agency. And normally people in it's not an industry that normally people stay at very long. They work here and then they work there. That kind of this grasshopper philosophy.
Yeah. We're seeing that a lot.
They didn't make you leave. They didn't make you to leave. They didn't make you leave to get more money.
That's good.
Which is why a lot of people would leave.
That's the main reason people leave,
right.
or get fired.
That always, right, is, you pay copywriter X $100,000 and they want 120, and I'm not going to pay that. They leave, they get their 120 somebody else. The new person you have to hire, you're not going to hire him for 100. You know that. It's like, so why go through this game, right?
Yeah. Well, they have the money, and they had the clients,
Right.
and they still do. I mean,
Yeah. So
it's a money thing for sure.
they would respect the fact that if you deserve more money, they would give it to you. You know,
That's good. That's why people stay. And
and
and they're doing great work now with the Lost class. I think that work is phenomenal. Matt Shepard is somebody that's doing really well there as a creative director. So yeah, I love it. But I do want to now switch over and talk about your current role, because that's what we're talking about now is
by the way,
how did you get into, or what made you decide to leave then this wonderland? There it is, black pencil.
I'll tell. That's part of my teaching. I'll talk about that. So how did I decide to get into that?
Yeah, why'd you leave, and how'd you cross over into an education?
Well, I left because of the Great Recession of 2008. I was working overseas. I'd been there since 2000, and in 2011, the position that I had, I was living and working in Moscow at the time. I was responsible for what they called EMA, Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So that was like my semi-global role, being based out of Moscow. And the client no longer had the money, nor did they feel, after we'd been there for a number of years, that they really wanted to continue to pay for an expat. In a sense, if I did my job well, I trained them. I mean, I was already teaching when I took my job there. So that was sort of the start of my teaching, is that when I went to Europe in 2000, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, they had no advertising, because most of it was post-Soviet Union countries, right? They didn't have advertising in the Soviet Union. You didn't have two products that competed against each other, right? There was milk and there was milk. It was like, there wasn't their milk and their milk. It was, which you need competition for advertising, right?
Yes.
There was no competition. So these people grew up without advertising fundamentally. They saw it, but they never did it.
Gotcha.
So when I was responsible prior to Moscow, I did a lot of work with Central Europe. And I was really more of a teacher to the Burnett creative teams about how to do advertising, particularly how to do Marlboro advertising. And then when they moved me to Moscow, again, since I was based there, most of the time I spent in the agency was training and teaching and growing the staff of people who were predominantly Russian or came from Russian-speaking countries,
Gotcha.
So Ukrainians or whatever, or Belarus, but Russian-speaking or Russian. And they had a lot to learn. They were eager, but they didn't have the background that the West had, right? So that was my job, was to kind of share the DNA, if you will.
So you were already you're saying you were already teaching.
Doing the teaching, right? And I loved it. And so, unfortunately, I wasn't ready to necessarily stop, but they didn't want an expat there any longer. They didn't feel the need for it. And somebody warned me when I first went overseas. They said, keep it in mind, it's very hard to come back to the home agency after you've been overseas and with the kind of role and responsibility that you had. I mean, in the 12 years I was overseas, my role of responsibility for Marlboro Creative was London to Vladivostok, Sweden to South Africa. Okay. I didn't go to every country, but literally that was the region, the areas that I was responsible for.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You can't come back to Chicago and be like head of promotions.
No.
It just kind of doesn't work. So they're really, at the time, everybody was laying off people, and even the home office, they were like, well, Marshall, we could, find a spot for you on this, but I don't think you're going to be really happy about it. So, yeah, you're right. I wouldn't be. It was underutilizing what I could bring.
Sure.
But that's just the way it was. So we separated. I came back to the States. I had recently gotten married in Moscow, actually.
Cool.
And really kind of wasn't sure what to do and where to go. I didn't really know that I wanted another agency. And at my age, I was not super hireable. Let's just be honest. That's how it is, right? So, agencies were looking for younger people who were less expensive. They certainly couldn't bring the experience, but there were, 6 positions for junior copywriter and no positions for senior copywriter and no positions for, copy chief or creative director, right? It's just very minimal. So I just said, you know what, I'll try to start my own gig. And so I started a small brand consultancy that I still have called the Left Hand Agency. And I do brand work for, a handful of clients on a project basis predominantly.
Nice.
But then I met Ken.
Crimstein.
In fact, a little bit before, but a guy I did the Left Hand with, his name is Steve Hirsch. I don't know if you know him, another ex-Burnetter who left about the same time as I did. He was a planner, strategic planner on the strategy side. So we sort of partnered up in the Left Hand and did work. We did Michael Jordan's restaurant for a number of years and a bunch of others. In fact, I don't know if you're a gum chewer, but do you know the gum Vibe? I think it's like Trident. It's this like gum that like explodes in your mouth and changes.
I think so.
Well, I named it.
Sure.
It's nice. A Mondelez product. So I often work on projects for Mondelez. Somehow it all happens to be naming projects. So that was one project I did for the Left Hand.
Awesome.
We put the name for that. So various things, but I really wanted more. And through Steve, I met Ken at Depaul in 2014. And we just clicked and we talked and, he said, hey, God, it would be great to have you here. And there was a different chairperson at the time. And she said, yeah, let's look at, bringing you on as an adjunct and, how about we give you this one class? So I started in 2015 with one class as an adjunct. 2 years later, they made me a full-time faculty. So I teach 3 classes a quarter. So it's 9 courses a year. And I couldn't be happier.
Good.
I love it. I mean, it's sort of like come full circle to what I wanted to do originally.
Right. The PhD thought you were going to.
It's a different topic, right? It's a different category. But being a copywriter and doing advertising, I'm still talking about words, right? Yeah. Is it whether it's poetry or it's a great headline, which is poetry, or great body copy, or being conceptual to come up with whatever the idea is. How do you understand your reader? How do you understand your market? I mean, there's so many parallel construction here, right? Yep. That it's like it was waiting for me to come in.
Gotcha. All came full circle. And so what do you tell your students to break into an agency like a Leo Burnett?
Yeah, well, what do I tell them? I tell them first, you've got to it's about who you are, not just what you do. So, people hire you, they don't hire your resume and they don't hire your portfolio. They appreciate your portfolio. They appreciate your resume or your cover letter or, the other kind of, trapping bullshit that they go through. But at the end of the day, when there are 5 people or 25 people being considered for the job, all of whom can do it, right? They wouldn't be considered if they couldn't do the job.
You have to do it, be able to do it first. Yes.
Right. But that's the cost of entry, right? Like that's the pair of jacks. You've got to have a pair of jacks to open, if you play poker. If you don't have a pair of jacks isn't going to win the game. Right. So you met the criteria to be interviewed and maybe even come back for a second. Yeah, nice book. Yeah, that's good. That's inventive. But who are you really? How do you fit here? Companies, like anything, are an organism, right? And they welcome organisms that are. I like medicine, so when a foreign body comes in, what do we do? We get sick, right? Our body doesn't like something that's foreign and doesn't fit with us.
Right.
Businesses are the same thing. Agencies for sure the same thing because they're so human, right? So they are looking to hire not a virus, but something that the body will, the body company will accept in as, you're like us, okay? You may be new, right? You weren't created here, but you're welcome here because you're like us. You do great work, but you're an asshole. We don't want you. So who are you as a brand, right? Like, do we understand you as, what do you bring in terms of your personality, in terms of your values, in terms of what you stand for? Why do I want you, Gino, instead of that person? Your books are both great, but who's going to fit, right? Who's going to
love that perspective?
Who's going to grow here? And if you grow, we grow, right?
Right.
It's a totally
and it should be the
strategic experience.
And it should be the same way for when you're looking at these agencies where you want to go. If you don't see a fit, you can go and leave. And the people that you're working with are so important. Your manager, if you see the writing on the wall and it's all red flags, you can definitely say no.
It's funny, you're reading my mind, because one of the, I hate to call them lectures, but one of the things that I do on one of the days during my courses is we talk about agencies. And so I have them, we look at some agencies and, I show them, what Burnett is like, and Ogilvy and Bernbach, and, sort of the grandfather agencies, the great ones, right? Because you have to understand them to understand what's going on today. They created what's going on today.
Of course.
Here's these agencies. Here's your assignment. I want you to go on the internet and research 15 agencies. Okay? You don't have to go to them, but read their website and find the one that fits you. And I said, agencies, think about it like this. It's no different than all of you here sitting in this classroom were accepted by Depaul. And I will bet you all of you got more than one college acceptance. Okay, you weren't, DePaul's my only choice, I guess I have to go here. No, you got accepted at DePaul and wherever else you applied because you guys are smart. But there's a reason you chose DePaul, besides the free ride or, forget the money part. Why did you choose DePaul? What is it about this school? Because you could get a good education in a lot of places. Right. You can do advertising in any agency. Yep. But does the culture fit you? Do you fit the culture? Does the culture fit you? Are you going to be happy there? Because you can't force it, right? No. The whole, fake it till you make it is total bullshit. And I tell them, don't ever follow the fake it till you make it, because you won't make it.
Right. They'll get you. I think also a couple of things to note. You could do research by listening to this podcast, and I think you need to stay really up to date, because these agencies are constantly shifting. The names stay the same, but the people are moving around all the time now. 2 years is about the average. It's even less now, I feel like. So don't be so attached to that name because it's different. Clients are shifting. So I just be very careful and make sure you're constantly doing that research, especially as we're coming up to application seasons. And
absolutely. They have to decide, which overall agency do you want to work with? And this is what I ask them. What do you want to do there?
Of course.
And what client do you want to work on? Hey, why? Well, I want to work at, the place that I want to work at Wheaton Kennedy because they do Nike, or they do, Old Spice, or I want to work at 72 and Sunny because I love their name, right? Like what could be better than being connected to a place, an entity called 72 and Sunny, right? Like
they got good clients too.
I'm not a huge proponent of like funny agency names. I mean, it never used to be that way, right? It was just the name of the person or people who started it.
Yeah.
Doyle Dane Burnbach, Ogilvy and Mather, like
but Conan Belling.
Exactly. They weren't Razorfish. Like what is Razorfish?
Oh yeah.
But then all of a sudden, agencies started to say, hey, you know what? Our names are important.
Mischief.
Like, right? They say something, right?
Mm-hmm. Mother is
right. Mine, the Left Hand Agency, 72 and Sunny. I think that's such a brilliant name. 72 and Sunny. If you're a client, you want your relationship to be 72 and Sunny. You want the work to be 72 and Sunny. If you work there, I mean, like, what better environment could you be in, right? Than 72 and Sunny. It's just brilliant. But you know what? That's not everyone's thing, right?
Yep.
Maybe they want to work for the classic, the the agencies that have been there a long time with the resources like a Leo Burnett, part of a global group, right?
Yeah.
Part of Publicis, or they, you know what? One of the reasons I went to the Universities of Washington is I wanted to live in Seattle. So
Nothing wrong with that.
yeah. So where do you want to live? You're going to be there every day. So these are the things you have to think about, right? Like
you're going to be there a lot and you're going to be working a lot.
Right.
So you might as well enjoy it.
Right.
Do that and do the research for yourself.
Yeah. But when it comes to, choosing you, and that's why I you asked about a philosophy. I don't know if I have really a philosophy, but I have something that I believe in. I'm what I call a brand patriot. I believe in brands, and as a brand patriot, I defend them because they have value and they bring strength and worth to whatever it is that company is. And whether it's your personal brand or it's the Marlboro, it's the difference between tater tots and mere potato puffs.
I never even heard of the mere potato puffs.
Well, they're not. They're just potato puffs, right? Yeah. You just go to the store and you can buy potato puffs, right?
Right.
But they're kind of like tater tots, but they're not tater tots, right?
Or Band-Aids and adhesive strips.
Right. Or how the fuck can you brand a banana? But they did. Chiquita. It's a banana, for God's sakes, right?
Avocados from Mexico.
Yeah. But you know what? People go into a store and they want a Chiquita banana.
Yep.
It's a banana, but they want a banana. So I want a person who's really good at doing this.
Yep.
Oh, it's got to be Gino because he's just got that personality. He's got that brand. He stands for something. We do brand exercises in classes. Who are you? So if somebody said to you, one of the students, I'll never forget, a couple of them, she said, I'm a Band-Aid. Like, I immediately know who she is, right? She's there. She's reliable. She's caring. She's protective. She's reliable. All these things that we associate, like she'll put it over the wound and help take care of
Interesting.
you. She's a Band-Aid. I immediately know. But if I don't want a Band-Aid in my group, right? If I want a cigarette lighter, she might not be the person, right?
Right. But I love that.
We spend a lot of time. So I guess one of the philosophies that I say is sort of like I preach a lot of brand patriotism. As I said, absolutely. I want brand patriots, and I also follow the practice of, as I said, I like medicine. I hope to come back in my next life as a doctor.
Okay,
but they have this little philosophy, if you will. It's called watch one, do one, teach one. I don't know if you ever heard it. So when you go to medical school for the first couple of years, it's just textbooks. It's memorization of, chemistry and anatomy and, all that, right? Yep. And then all of a sudden, for the third year, you're an intern. And you're like, I don't even know how to take somebody's blood pressure. I don't know how to put it in IV.
Right. Get the application.
Simplest possible things, right? Mm-hmm. So what do? You watch. So your resident will show you, 3 or 4 or 5, how many of her times, watch one. This is how we do it. Whatever, right? Okay, now do one. And you're like, poor patient. Sorry if I hurt you, right?
Sure.
And then your career is the do one. That's what your career is. And then for some people, you become the teach one. Yes. And that's kind of my philosophy that I tell them. You're here to watch one and to learn how to do one in my classes. I've done this for over a quarter century.
Right.
Watch what I have to do. I'm helping you. And then I'm going to watch what you're doing because I want you to start doing, but you're still really watching, right? But I want you to be, pro-ready when we're done.
Absolutely.
So you can go do one.
Yeah. No, I love that philosophy. So appreciate it. So these are all the questions I have, Marshall. If people want to reach out to you, I really appreciate all this advice, and they want to reach out to you and they want to learn more. How can they do that? What's the best way to contact you?
Email. So my email is Goldma 1, Goldma 1 at depaul.edu.
Perfect. And then we'll also put those in our description here. But this has been great. Is there anything else that you want to get out to the world? Let the students know out there, or all good?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, DePaul has a great program. I'm not like here to like proselytize for DePaul, but
Go ahead.
You can teach it. You can, we have people who really know how to do it.
Good.
And if you're interested, check us out.
Perfect.
It's, and I'll tell you that, you should never fear of not having a job if you're in advertising. As long as we don't become a socialized society where there's just milk, right?
I like that.
Or the car, right? Mm-hmm. How many cars do we have? Do we really need all these cars? Probably not. But, we can go down the list, right?
Yep.
They all need to be communicated.
Oh, I love that. That's actually really nice. That's reassuring. I appreciate that.
Advertising is just, to me, between barbers and ad people will always have a job.
I love that. We needed to hear that. I needed to hear that. So,
the forms we use change, right?
Yeah. Medium.
But the essence of what it is, it's public communication for a brand versus that brand, or that brand, right? They're all competing for the same user, or oftentimes the same user, right? Yep. So there's always work. Be a good communicator. Be a good communicator, but be an ethical communicator.
Yep.
Don't abuse. You're empowered when you're in advertising to put language out there to a very big group of people. Be responsible.
Yep.
Be ethical. Don't take advantage of it.
Perfect. All right, Marshall.
Do I get a parting gift?
What's that?
Like snack trays or anything? No parting gift, like snack trays?
Well, it's coming in the mail. It's coming in the mail. Yeah. Or I'll drop it off.
Yeah, there you go. This was fun. Thank you.
No, yeah, you did a great job. I do appreciate you coming on, and we'll have people reach out, and will be in the description.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks again, Gino.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. If you like what you heard, it would mean a lot to us and help us grow and get better guests and better break-ins if you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars and a small review if you have the time. Be sure to connect with our guests if you like what they said by going to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. That's all one word, Breaking and Entering Pod on Instagram. We have links to their portfolios and their LinkedIn, and they want to connect, so do that. And thank yous. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio engineer, and Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Can't do it without you two, and a team from the University of Illinois. It's a student team from the agency called AdBuzz. They're a PR agency, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week with another amazing guest.